Call the June 2020 USD 350 Board of Education meeting to order. Welcome visitors. Agenda.
I have nothing to add on the agenda.
Okay. Motion.
Mr. President, move that the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Consent agenda.
The one, nothing unusual to report on the normal items. The one, there's a couple of items that aren't typically on there is to grant budget authority for my office to make transfers as needed to finish up the budget year. And then that just saves us a special meeting to approve all of the transfers. And then to approve destruction of financial documents. We keep those for 5 years and then we destroy them. So those two things are new on the consent agenda this month.
Can I get a motion?
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Patron comments. Okay. Insurance policy.
On page 25, you have the renewal spreadsheet that shows the difference in premium from last year to the current year for renewal. I'll let Trey go over it. Bottom line, we're looking at about a 12% increase, $8,700 increase in premium, which I was a little surprised to see, sort of. I'd heard of a lot of school districts that have seen the same kind of thing, so.
Which one do you have, Josh? Is that the one with the, what's that last number? Is that the 80,000, 444?
Yeah, 441.
441, yeah.
Yep, yeah.
Okay, so just to give you a little a starting place, EMC for years, and I don't know how far back it's been, has not had a very well-performing book of school business, which means they haven't been making any money, or at least that's what they're telling us. And it's happened for many years, and so they went and they basically increased all rates across their entire book of business, whether the loss ratio of the school was good or bad. They didn't care. They just increased everybody's rates for all schools. In addition to increasing rates, then they looked at deductibles and they increased those too. And they knew that, and basically their theory was, we have to get these premiums where they're sustainable, or we just won't be able to insure schools anymore, and they don't want to do that because they're good at it. And there's not a lot of school carriers. There's not a lot of insurance carriers out there that will insure schools. So they knew they were going to get bombarded by agents, and they stood firm on the rate. They won't change it. They're not changing it for any schools. So then we went to the deductible. So your guys' current deductible is a $3,000 deductible, $3,000 deductible for anything but wind hail, and it's $5,000 if it's wind hail, which more than likely it's probably a wind hail event is the biggest risk. They want to go to a $10,000 all peril deductible, 25 wind hail, in addition to increasing the rates 12%. So then we decided we begged for forgiveness on the deductible a little bit, and they came back and said that they would go to a 510 for this year, but next year they'll review it and potentially increase this to a 1025. So there's two quotes actually. There's a deductible for 510, which is still an increase, but it's substantially less than the 1025. 15,000 on the wind hail. So your wind hail would be 10 instead of 25. And the difference in premium on the two quotes is $1,000, or just under $1,000. So those are your two options, and that is the only two options I could get. I couldn't get any rate. So last year, I didn't even come to the meeting. My job was easy. I didn't have to earn any of my money, and you guys just accepted the renewal. It was a flat renewal. No changes, flat renewal. This year, I guess you would say they're making up for last year. Should they have increased rates last year? Based on this year, yes. In my opinion, they probably should have increased them last year if this year's as bad as they say it is already. So It would have probably been perceived better had they done a 5 or 6 last year, 5 or 6 this year. They didn't do it. They did nothing last year and a 12% this year. Truthfully, I don't think they're out of line. I've compared other schools. We insure other schools, not in obviously not in Stafford County, but we insure the Mound Ridge School and we insure the Camp School, and they're not out of line. Those schools are both quite a bit more, but it doesn't feel good, and it's not a fun time to bring an increase, especially with the way the budget things are, and I get all that. My hands are extremely tied. We have no other carrier. We have no other good carrier. We have no carrier at all that will do a school. EMC is our only option. There are other carriers though. So, I mean, I don't want you to think that there's not maybe another option. I don't know if it's good or not, but there are other carriers. We don't have one. But I truthfully don't think that this is feels horrible, but I don't think the premium's out of line for the coverage that you get, considering how their book of business has performed and comparing to other schools. I think the lower deductible, my personal opinion is the lower deductible for $1,000 to get a $10,000 wind hail compared to a 25, so it's $15,000 difference for $1,000 is a better buy. And I'm optimistically hoping that maybe if they have a good year, they would allow us to stay at the 510.
And I didn't even include that $10,000 and $25,000 deductible quote on here, just because it's so close in price. We're talking $1,000 difference for $15,000.
For a drastically higher deductible.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But just so you know, that option is available.
Yeah, and I guess I could have just not even brought
No,
that
that's
up.
all right. No,
But yeah,
it's part of the deal.
it does make sense to go with the lower one in my opinion too. And then assuming you renew it and then we're here next year, we'll just see what happens. I mean, we just have to see what happens with the deductible next year. But they have given me a warning that if nothing changes for the better, they would increase the deductible next year. But we'll cross that bridge. Let's just get 1 year down, 1 year at a time. So the property rates went up and the linebacker rates went up, and those were your biggest increasers. Property mainly, because there's just such a large amount of property insured.
Trey, you had mentioned that our deductible didn't, our policy didn't go up in price from last year. And correct me if I'm wrong, or jump in here, Josh. It was either last year or the year before. To hold that, we had to change our coverage a little bit of our policy. Is that correct? We basically lost insurance on a facility to keep our price the same. That's the question, I guess.
Well, I don't know. I don't recall losing insurance on any facility, but there might have been minor changes. Like last year, the minor changes were a few of the vehicles went to a $1,000 deductible and a few went to a $3,000 deductible. Well, no, I don't think they did. A few of them went to a $1,000 deductible from last year's renewal. So there were a few deductible changes, minor, but that's there were no properties that were taken off or not insured.
Well, I didn't mean taken off, but basically our insurance reduced to keep us in the ballpark on price. That's
not that I'm aware of. No.
okay.
Do you recall, Josh?
I don't recall. I can look it up.
I could too. I could go back. I mean, at least for 19, I guess I'd have to go look up 18 to see if maybe that was the year potentially that it could have happened. I just don't recall that.
And this time, a bunch of our deductibles are changing on vehicles too, looks like.
The ones that are changing are the ones, there's a...
Basically, everything went to $1,000.
Everything went to 1,000, and then the ones that have a cost new of over 100, they make you go to 3,000. So it's just the way I don't know why, that's just what they've chosen to do. It's just they feel those are more expensive to repair. So it's a couple buses, I believe. Actually, it's just that one 09 bus that has a $3,000, and then everything else is $1,000.
We've been real happy with EMC. They've always been good to work with. Except when they want me to fill out a bunch of reports and.
That's not any fun, is it? That stuff I sent you the other day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to do that here this spring when we're shut down. But they've been a good company to work with. They've held up there in the bargain. 2 years ago, Trey quoted with a Midwest Public Risk Municipal Pool, and the quote was $106,000 at that time. So we were, they weren't even in the ballpark. But you don't have any other carriers you can
We don't.
quote?
I talked to the agent that insures the school in Mountain Ridge. He's with Act 360. He's with us, and we don't.
Okay.
And he's fighting the same thing at the Mountain Ridge School, and then Tony's fighting the same thing at Canton School, but we just don't have a good option. We have heard that. I talked to the agent in Mountain Ridge somehow he knows the superintendent at Pratt. Maybe you've talked to the superintendent at Pratt. I'm not sure, but I don't know the specifics, but they bought a policy from a carrier, and they got a $250,000 deductible with that policy. So then what they ended up doing was they bought a buy-down policy to buy that deductible down to get it reasonable, and they spent $30,000 on that premium. And the only reason I know this is because I work with that agent, and he knows that superintendent over there. We don't know the carrier. We don't know the specifics other than they started at 250 wind hail, and they bought it down for $30,000. So there is a carrier out there, and I asked Joe, the agent, I asked him, and he said it's his understanding that carrier starts at $250,000 on wind hail. We heard that. I just didn't know if they were starting that if they were just starting that as a baseline for all schools, and that's his understanding. I don't know. You guys would have to. There's an agency out there somewhere that could probably get you some more information if you're curious to find that stuff out. We just don't have, because what happens is some agencies have an exclusive contract with a carrier, and then we can't access it, and that's what we're kind of running up against. Is there aren't a lot of carriers to begin with. And then the ones that potentially there are, we can't ride with. And I don't know if they'd be better or not.
So another option we have is KASB has I don't know how they sponsor this or help run it. It's fairly new, but Kansas Educational Risk Management Pool. So it's a pool of 22 school districts right now. They've been 5 years, maybe 6 years.
Yeah.
They've been doing that, but they pool their resources, and then the danger there is that if you have a pool and there's a lot of claims and you run out of money, we might be assessed further premiums to cover those losses. Well, this group, they have their pool, and what's outside of that pool, what's above that, they have reinsurance that covers any losses above what's in the pool, and then even above, and then there's another reinsurer above that. I don't know a lot about it. I've got an application here that it can't go through the agency here in town. This would be separate from that, but I've started getting some information together to get a quote from them. So I guess our options are, we can take a look at this risk management pool, get a quote, see where they're at. Again, that one pool we looked at was $105,000 2 years ago. We could see where that's at. We have to get something done by the end of the month.
Right.
So if we choose not to act tonight on the renewal that we have in front of us, I can get a quote from them, I think, in time, and compare then we'd have to meet again before the end of the month to approve something. Or we can seek out another agency with a different carrier. I don't know that that's a feasible option to try to find a relationship we can get with another agency, but it's a possibility.
So who was our carrier before Act 360?
I don't
I
know.
should-
Oh,
I should
it was
know that.
fee insurance and Hutch,
And what's the reason we got away from them? Somebody local?
local. Mhm.
I want to say
Locally.
local too, just
Yeah.
kind of like to know what
Yeah.
It was the same carrier, it was the
Same-
same company, we just switched agencies, is all
Yeah.
you guys did. I don't know how many
Still
years you've been with
EMC.
EMC
What's
total.
that?
I don't know how many years you've been
I
with
don't know.
EMC, guy.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that.
Have you talked to any schools that are in?
I have not. No, this was a Friday conversation, and I went and talked to Trey, said, hey, here's the deal, we might be looking at other things, and we just talked through the policy and everything, so. I guess my recommendation would be, we ought to take a look at this. We've got, this may be a better option. It does worry me with as bad as EMC's book of business has been, how much worse is it gonna get? Do you have any thoughts on that? Troy?
Well,
Is it-
all I know is that EMC is doing the best they can to keep prices reasonable to where they're sustainable, to where they don't have to take huge rate increases or huge deductible increases like some of the carriers we know have. This seems large, but compared to some of the other schools we've seen and compared to the pool that we ran, I just don't think you'll find that this is, but again, I don't think you're doing the wrong thing by getting another quote from a pool. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have another option at all. I mean, then you'll put your mind at ease, and you can make a decision.
I'd like to look into that.
Okay, I agree. I'd like to see it, I mean, with funding a little unknown, we go to see where we're at.
Okay.
You know, I don't think we've had a lot of calls to be made, you know, as far as issues around here. And I know commercial's completely different than residential, but I've got two personal carriers on residential, two different carriers, and both my insurance and all have gone down. And this 12% hike is, in my opinion, out of line. Yeah, and I may be wrong at the end of the day, but that's a lot of money. $8,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah, so probably need a motion to table, and we will have to have a special meeting to approve a renewal or a new policy or joining that group, but really that's, I think with time, that's all we're gonna have.
I'll make that motion to table this.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to table the motion for the insurance policy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay, guys. I'll just keep in touch with you.
Okay, we'll do it.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, supplemental student insurance policy.
That information on page 28, we purchase a supplemental insurance policy for our families. This provides, you know, if kids are injured at school or at school activities, you know, activities are inherently dangerous. It's on the parents to cover those medical expenses. Sometimes there's a misconception that if my kid falls down and breaks his arm on the playground, then the school's going to pay for that. Well, we don't. That's up to the family to take care of those things. But we do provide a separate policy. It's limited coverage, so it's not meant to cover everything. There's a $250 deductible. Last year they had to add that. We use it frequently. We've seen our premiums go up, and they've not been making money on us. So that premium jump last year was understandable. You know, there's maximums to it. Then there's a mid-catastrophic policy that has a $6,500 deductible. So when you get into a more major injury, it would help families cover some of those costs. Then there's a third level of coverage that's a $25,000 catastrophic policy. So, you know, a major injury, a loss of a limb or a death or something like that. And the Activities Association, we pay for a policy with them. We're required to do that. And then we have a separate policy. It's not part of this. It's a few $100s a year. But it covers basically the same thing as the Acacia policy does. It's with the same insurer. We added that a few years ago because the Acacia policy only covers those activities. So if kids are participating in an athletic event that's Acacia sponsored, and they have a catastrophic injury, then that policy will kick in. Sixth graders are not covered by that. We have sixth graders participating in KSHA activities. So we added this policy mainly to cover that, but it covers all the kids. If we're going to a field trip that has nothing to do with a KSHA activity, something happens, we have that coverage. So we feel we have pretty good levels of coverage there to help out our families. Premiums are unchanged from last year. If we renew, which is my recommendation, and we come to fall sports time and they say it's canceled because of the virus, they'll hold our check and issue a new policy, or return our check, and then they'll issue us a new policy, not including football and the fall sports. So I feel confident that that will happen. And we won't be paying for something we don't need. But we didn't get a refund for last year, but water under the bridge. So I'd recommend we renew that policy.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the proposal for student accident insurance from K&K in the amount of $12,692.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the proposal for student accident insurance from K&K in the amount of $12,692. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Recreation building.
Okay, we have a purchase contract signed and notarized by the Garners, and Derek and Elisa signed that contract today. The Recreation Board, the Recreation Commission approved the draft of the lease agreement for 5 years, so they went ahead and signed that purchase contract. So that is moving forward. As soon as the attorney gets it, we'll move to closing. Our attorney was not comfortable with us formally approving the lease agreement because the lease agreement says USD 350 is the owner of this property. Well, we are not until we close, so he was uncomfortable with the legalities of saying, yes, we'll approve this lease agreement without saying we own the property. So when that closes, we'll have to approve this lease agreement, but I included it here for you. I had a couple of questions for the attorney just to make sure that we're covered on the insurance side of things. If the building burns down in 2 years, either we're compensated with the insurance and we return lease fee, or we don't return a lease fee and they keep the insurance claim. I feel confident with wading through the legalese that we're covered there. And so I feel comfortable with that. I did provide the Rec Commission with a letter stating the board's intent, that we don't intend to use the building, we intend that it to be recreational commission use. At the end of 5 years, the Rec Commission, the school board, at that time we need to determine what to do. Whether that is deed it to the Rec Commission or lease it for no or minimal fee. But I tried to represent this board's position with that, just to make it clear on that lease.
Josh, I had a question on,
Yes.
under the maintenance and repair, Article 9. You know, this is a unique situation that we're all being put in here. But it talks about the expenses of keeping the foundation, roof, exterior wall, sidewalk, etc. in good condition. I guess the question I got, you know, ultimately I think the goal here is this to be the Rec Commission's building.
Yes.
I guess I have maybe a little bit of an issue in a year or two we get down the road and someone needs to put a roof on there, and that'd be USD 350 when ultimately this is the goal to be the Rec Commission. Yes, I understand that we own it, but I guess the issue I have is I mean, I know it's all taxpayers' money here, but I guess I got an issue coming out of 350 and am I wrong for thinking that here, or am I not reading that right under number 9?
I don't know, with it being a lease, if you can really put that on the tenant to,
No,
If it's
under normal
not a-
circumstances, I would agree.
yeah.
The expectation is that the rec would cover any and all maintenance to the property.
That's the way I understood it initially, but as I read
Right,
this.
right,
Yeah.
right. And
You
if
just
we need
need
to have some
350s
sort
on
of
the-
like other thing in writing to say that, we can, or whatever makes it legal, but the rec commission will cover any and all maintenance
Okay.
and upkeep.
And maybe it would be best to have the attorney rewrite that section.
That reads that, and I agree with you, it reads that the school district would be,
Well, that's the way I see it. That's exactly how I see that.
Yeah.
But understanding that, I
Yes.
agree with what
right,
you're saying.
that's what we intend to do.
Okay.
And whatever we need to sign.
It's just a different wordage that,
Right.
I think he could word it differently. I'll have to check with him if there's a reason legally it would need to be different than that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Any other items on the lease?
How soon do you expect to be in there?
The day the school owns it.
It'll take, once the attorney gets the contract to the title company, they'll schedule closing, so it's just a matter of scheduling that. And we did put in the agreement that it would close before June 30th, so by the end of the month, it should be sealed up.
Anything else? Okay, house remodel.
We do have some action to take on this. It's been kind of rough working with the attorney on this because we're working with Garners on both issues. He gets confused a little bit sometimes on which one we're talking about because we're dealing with them at the same time. But I have for you a document that our attorney drafted to accept the donation of the property. So Garners will need to sign a deed saying that they're deeding the property to the district. And then separate, I didn't include this, I just got it today, but just a signed statement from the Garners saying we intend to give this house to the school district and make it available for us for the industrial arts program. And that there's been no money changed hands or any monetary consideration, and then if they want to claim that on their taxes, that's up to them and how they approach that. But so I didn't get in touch with them today to sign those papers, but I believe we could go ahead and acknowledge the gift. So this is just a formal statement saying that we're accepting that gift from them. And then we'll have Derek and Elisa sign that.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the confirmation and acknowledgement of the donation of the house at 611 North Broadway from Tom and Sabrina Garner.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the confirmation and acknowledgement of the donation of the house at 611 North Broadway from Tom and Sabrina Garner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
And we will do our best to get something in the newspaper about this when it's all finalized, and do a news story and have Adam come in, maybe some of the kids, get some photos to send to the paper and thank them in a big way.
We'll try and document it with our AV Productions class as we go along too, so we'll have something to process.
Okay. Meal prices.
We didn't have this information at the last meeting, so it's recommendation to hold the student meal prices flat and increase the adult guest meals for breakfast and lunch. There's federal regulations that determine how much we have to charge, so we're not subsidizing our food service program, subsidizing paid lunches with federal aid. intended for free or reduced price lunches. So, but we're good to stay put on our lunch prices. I feel comfortable with that, other than the adult guests.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the meal prices for the 2021 school year as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the meal prices for 2020 through 21 school year as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, board goals.
I didn't really have a lot of things to discuss on this. We've had the same basic 5 goals the last few years, and strategies within that. We could get a little more purposeful about having more of a strategic plan, which might be important with our facilities and what's going to happen with our local economy with the water situation and change in population and all that. If we get much more detailed in something like that, I wouldn't feel comfortable leading our group doing that. If we want to just renew these goals, we should discuss that. But at some point, I think it would benefit this board if we would have somebody come in and help us through that process. Whether that's this year, or a year or 2 down the road, it's up to you all, but just something to consider. But if you have any feedback or suggestions on priorities for these goals, if we don't want to take a different direction, we'll just add to these and adjust with whatever priorities this board sees that we need to address. So if nothing now, just send me feedback, and we'll have these to formally approve the next month. We'll use a similar format and just update as we need to.
Any thoughts?
I think it's keeping it where it is right now, because of all the uncertainties with the upcoming budget and what school's going to look like when we reopen. I'd like to leave it flexible enough that we can just kind of build on what we've already got.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Student handbook.
This one's pretty easy. We really have no changes. Just one minor grammatical change. One thing, we're working on an update to the bell schedule, so that may be a little different. Something that'll make the schedule a little bit better. Really, that's just moving that learning support period to the morning time. And that would make our high school lunch a little earlier. They're eating at 12:30 now. So that would get them closer to noon when they go to lunch. Condense our lunch schedule a bit. Make that a little more efficient. And we've got some feelers out to the teachers on whether that's going to work or not. So that would be the only change. I'd recommend the board approve the handbook.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the 2020-2021 student handbook as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the 2020 through 21 student handbook as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, board member activities. Sean?
Nothing.
Carl?
No.
I'll just look so expectantly at me. One of the things that we did, 2 things that are kind of major that came out of the last one is that we have tabled this discussion about making changes to the facilities in Pratt for Haskins or the new addition. Right now, we are going into the 4th year of the special ed co-op without increasing the assessment raise, or without raising the assessment. I don't know if we can continue to do that, honestly. So that's something that's going to be discussed in the next couple meetings. If we get the government funding of $1.2 billion that Dale Dennis says we should get, then we could avoid cuts and keep that fairly low, but it all depends on whether we're going to get those federal funds for the special ed programs. So we're kind of at the mercy of the politicians at this point. And that's where we stand.
Okay. I've got nothing. Administrative reports. Mr. White.
Well, I didn't send anything, Josh, I don't have much, just wanted to go over, as you guys probably know, we had to make a decision based on the information we had at the time to cancel prom. We planned on doing it the 20th, and when we made that decision, we were going to be limited to 50 people.
6 feet apart.
6 feet apart, which we could line dance or whatever, but, so we made that decision, and then I think it was the next day that county commissioners determined that they could move that to the 15th, but we didn't feel changing it would be responsible because that might jeopardize our graduation, you know, on the 11th too. I haven't had any feedback really from anybody. I think everybody's been pretty understanding. I sent an email out to students, just explaining to them that we had to do that. And I haven't had anything, I don't know if Mr. Myers said anything about it. Still plan on graduation on the 11th of July at 10:30. Mr. Meyer and I talked about that this morning. We are planning to do it in the gym just as normal. That way we don't have to worry about weather, things like that. So can put that on the calendar.
Does everybody intend to plan on attending graduation?
Yeah.
I'm still iffy.
Okay. We'll get you the details of what we plan to do. But yeah, 10:30, so we'd probably have you guys meet at 10:15.
What are we doing about handshakes and hugs and?
Don't know yet for sure.
We're going to wait. We may forego the line, you know, we'll see.
And there's still a chance that we could be forced outside. I don't know, but our plan right now is to do our normal graduation, and the week before we'll make those determinations of what restrictions we'll have to have.
And I did talk to Mr. Knight, and he is going to get with students to see if we can still have a performance by our vocal and band people. If we can get everybody together, he'll be able to practice that kind of unrestricted beforehand. So hopefully we can really have a normal ceremony in July.
No restriction on audience?
As of the 15th of June, if everything stays the way it is in our county, we still have recommendations of, you know, not having each other and stuff, wearing masks if we feel like we need to, but no attendance restrictions. That could change.
Backing up to the prom thing, did the students, or do they have a meeting scheduled to figure out what to do with the funds they raised?
The prom?
Yeah.
We said, yeah, the prom parents met the other night.
Okay.
Well, as far as the funds that are raised, the money that wasn't spent, a lot of it was encumbered.
They bought some decorations.
Decorations and party favors and stuff, so a lot of that money was spent. But they'll have about $1,000 to $1,500 that would have been spent. They're not spending, and that'll just carry over into that account for their senior year.
Okay.
So, and then the other thing, Acacia made the determination that we can, as a school, determine that we waive the 5 credit requirement for participation for this fall semester because of COVID. So if we had a student that only passed 4 classes, we could allow them to participate. I'm torn on it, but we do have a couple kids that it would affect. Probably one that would be active. I kind of would like consideration to go ahead and allow that, to go ahead and allow those students to participate, but only for this reason. If we have a student come in from out of district or out of state and we don't have any idea what their access to education was, and they didn't pass enough classes because they didn't have internet or because we know we did everything we could for our kids, but we don't have control of that. I'd like to have the option to give those kids the opportunity to participate. And it is just a one semester. So I'd be open to input from you guys.
And we have somebody in that situation?
But every year we have a couple kids who don't pass 5 classes, and so they can't participate for a full semester based on CASH's policies. I can't really go into individual details on that, but not here. But, anyway, what are your thoughts? I want the accountability, but I also like the flexibility for, as I said, incoming students. We can't just do it for incoming students. If we do it, we have to do it for everything.
But in the past, in that situation, we did what then?
Okay, the CASH's policy is if they do not pass 5 courses in the prior semester, they have to sit out for a full semester. They can't participate at all. CASH's reasoning is some schools simply said your grade can't go down. Some schools still held that accountability, and some, reportedly have some students who failed classes that didn't have internet access and really didn't have access to the education. So CASH said, well, for one semester, we're going to waive that, but we're going to leave it up to local school. We're not really taking that rule away. We're just giving local school boards the authority to allow those students to go ahead and participate.
We got a little bit mixed feelings. I guess the kids that put the effort in it and did a really good job and rewarded for it. But also like to see.
Do you know if there's extenuating circumstances that caused that student to not pass 5?
Well, it would be on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
I don't think we can do that on a case-by-case. I think we have to say yes or no.
You're just wanting to lower it from 5 to 4?
Just waive the 5.
Waive the 5 altogether?
I'm like Darren, I have mixed emotions about that.
Well, honestly, my first thought was, no, we don't want to do that. There's no way. But we went to great lengths to make sure every one of our students had an opportunity. We don't know what somebody that moves here from Oklahoma or whatever, what opportunities they have. And honestly, one of our cases is extenuating. We can talk about that in the executive session if you want to.
It's probably something we'd have to have a motion on, isn't it?
The CASHA recommended the board make that decision and pass that. We wouldn't have to do it tonight. You guys think about it.
Say we can talk more in executive session. And
We can talk about a specific student in executive session, but
Right.
the general policy of
And that's,
what we want to do, we need to be careful about that.
okay.
so any other questions? That's all I have. It's been a strange end of the year. Normally we'd be reporting on our state track, music and all of that right now, but
Thank you. Mr. Meyer?
We had, it's great to see the kids back in the building. And they want to be there. We've got kids coming in for meals. We're doing mostly drop-off now. We've got a few eating breakfast with the rec program. Danton's doing a recreation program, just kind of a summer camp type thing with some of the younger kids. They come in and eat breakfast and they do some activities. We've got our kids in doing doing athletics, conditioning for the most part, doing some workouts. It's an awkward rule that Keisha put in place that the kids have to have 10 practices before they participate in competition. I understand the impetus there, that we want them to be in shape before we make them, before we have them compete in a ball game. But, you know, we've had seen some of my friends with their 8-year-old softball team. They're out playing 8 games a day for the last 2 weekends, so kids are pretty resilient. They can handle it. But our coaches are doing a great job getting the kids in. Library is opened up on a very limited basis this week, and we'll start to open up a little bit more. And as far as the opening up for our meetings, I guess it would be up to you all. Would you prefer to just go back in the boardroom and run our meetings as normal, or stay here? Any preferences on that?
It was fine with me.
Or do you kind of like this room?
Where's the air conditioner?
In there, because I have to shut this one up because it's so noisy.
I think as long as we follow whatever the county guidelines are, I'm okay with
Even
us
as far
being
as
back
like
there.
the 6 foot,
Uh-huh,
they're not saying that that's required.
right, and after
They're
July
all-
1st, I think
They're
we
gonna,
can go back in there without any problem.
they're gonna say that we recommend it, we recommend masks and all those things, so. Depends on what you mean by following the guidelines.
Well, if she puts
Their rules.
restrictions
Right,
on the county again,
Okay.
if we have another case or something, then I think we need to follow whatever those are, but
sure.
I'm okay with going back next door too.
Okay. We're looking at a lot of online learning tools. Just some of our teachers have found some tools. We've had free subscriptions through this deal that maybe we can use them next year, not just anticipating if we do have an issue and have to go more remote learning again, but just they're good tools. So we're looking at a lot of different online learning tools there to make instruction better and easier and more efficient. Legislative update, the budget situation is complicated. The legislature passed the budget right as this shutdown hit. The legislature didn't know if they'd be back, so they passed the budget. And then the world shut down and the economy tanked. Revenue estimates came out in April, said $650 million shortfall this time next year. They came back to close up shop, then did some legislative maneuvering, met again. I won't get into all that, but they did not change the budget. So the budget as it stands does not balance, but it's been passed already. So I don't know what's going to happen there. We could see a cut. KSDE officials are telling us they're not hearing anything from Topeka that cuts are coming. I read an article, I think I sent it to you all, about just, they say it's going to be fine, but nobody is showing us how it's going to be fine. So $650 million is a big hole to fill. It could just be the flexibility in federal funding or additional federal funding would help fix that, would fix the entire thing. So there's a disconnect between the budget as it is and what we know about our budget hole. So it's very disconcerting. But that's where they're at. When would we know more? My best guess is November. There will be new revenue estimates. The legislature won't reconvene until January. I suppose there could be a special session called, but more than likely, if it's before January, it would be the governor making allotment cuts. So we'll be well into next school year, probably before anything's done. If things are fixed with some federal funding, we could know that a lot sooner. But if that's not the case, we may not know till January or February what's going to happen with that budget. So that's your legislative update. Maintenance projects, our gym floors, we started that to get those done. And then we had a leak in the air conditioner in the old gym after they had buffed it and got it ready to put the finish on. And so we're gonna have to let that dry out. So it's gonna sit for a month. They can use it, it's fine, nothing's really damaged. It's just, that's got to be dry before they put the finish on. So they'll come back and finish that once that dries out. The shop, classroom, and the weight room, concrete has been polished, that's done, looks great. It's a nice look. So maintenance-free floors, I like that. Our front entrance by Blaine's office, you notice that's been crumbling over the last few years. We've painted and patched as we could, but it's done. We need to do something. So I got an estimate from Trent Salee to come redo that. He wasn't comfortable giving a quote because tearing that off, he has no idea what he'll get into, but he was estimating about $5,000 once they come in, tear all that out, redo it. So it'd be similar finish to what it is now, but done right and fixed up good. But we have to do something there. It's just crumbling. It's getting worse every day. HVAC system, we've got a problem in our big gym, the air handling unit there, the coil is leaking, so we need to replace that coil. I don't know if that will be cheaper than moving to the other unit that needs a new shaft and motor. Will it be cheaper to fix that shaft and motor or put a new coil in the other one? So right now we have one unit that works but is leaking, and so we're just trying to determine what needs to be done there. Ultimately, I'd like to put rooftop units in there, the way we can run that system separate from the main building. Can heat and cool the gym separate than everything else, but that'll be a discussion down the road. Roofing, we keep patching this roof and patching this roof, and it's hard to find the leak. It's frustrating. But this roof and the gym, the main gym roof, are the two that are closest to need of replacement. I got a quote for, or proposal for $130,000, $138,000 for this roof. Between our debt service and that would be an entire year of capital outlay budget right there. Carl and Derek, we had a facility meeting a couple weeks ago. We went and looked at some things, talked through the budget. The HVAC rooftop units, we still plan to do those. Those need to be done, but we've got a plan in place for that. We'll look at that in the fall. Heating is the safety issue. Cooling is okay, other than obviously the leak in the gym. Did you guys have anything to add on our capital outlay budget?
We've got a long list and not enough money for it all, so.
So, a lot of challenges.
That
Like-
makes sense. No.
Like I mentioned, between our debt service and that library roof, that would be the entire capital outlay budget. No computers, no fixing up of the front entrance, no vehicles, nothing in a year. That would use it all up. So, but the roof needs to not leak. So we've got some challenges. I told you I'd have a firm budget for you. I don't. I'm still waiting on information on the roof, what we can do to went through. We talked about, I think, somebody brought up, maybe Carl brought up, or Derek, can we use some of the investment money that's dedicated to the library? We did that last year with the carpet, which is an appropriate expense. If we can't afford all of those things and we need to get them done, we can visit with the library board and the foundation board about that. Now would be a horrible time to do that because the investments have tanked. We've lost a lot of dollar value in that investment fund. Pulling 130 out right now would not be smart, but it could be an option.
Does the city not have any responsibility for building maintenance, or they just pay a certain amount every year? Okay.
In the interlocal agreement, it says that the maintenance and upkeep of the facility is up to the school district.
I haven't looked at it for a long time, so I couldn't remember.
The July organizational meeting, I do have, just want to remind you, that's coming up. Page 60 shows the July business items. That's when we set our meeting dates, identify the bank, make appointments, do all of those standard things here, appoint people. The highlight, or the ones with an asterisk, would be the appointments that apply to you all as board members. So be thinking about that. The July meeting, you don't want to miss, and be appointed to the committee that nobody wants to be on. So just be thinking about that. We'll have that coming up in July. This week I'll be attending the KSSA, our State Superintendent's Association Board of Directors meeting. I'll do that via Zoom. I don't want to drive all the way to Topeka for a 2-hour meeting. And then I'm part of this executive leadership forum tomorrow. That'll also be via Zoom, talking about this crisis and how we're going to move out of it and move into next year. And then I have my economic development meeting tomorrow, so busy week with some meetings. That's all I had for my report.
Thank you. All right. Executive session. Personnel.
I do have some personnel items we need to discuss, probably 15 minutes with Mr. White and myself.
Okay. Any motion?
Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session to discuss personnel issues pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KOMA, with Mr. White and Mr. Meyer to be included, and that we return to open session at 8:14 in this room.
In a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board go into executive session to discuss personnel pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KOMA, with Mr. White and Mr. Meyer be included, and that we return to open session at 8:13. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Go ahead.
Motion carried.
I'd recommend we go over to the board room.
Okay.
Apparently so.
Okay. Call the meeting back to order. Negotiations. Can we get a motion?
5 minutes with me.
Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session to discuss changes to the teacher's negotiated agreement pursuant to the exception for employer-employee negotiations under KOMA, with Mr. Meyer to be included, and that we return to open session at 8:21 in the next room.
It's been moved and seconded that the board go into executive session to discuss changes to the teacher's negotiated agreement pursuant to the exception for employer-employee negotiations under KOMA, with Mr. Meyer to be included, and that we return to open session at 8:21 in this room. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We'll call the meeting back to order. Closing business items, resignations or contracts.
I have a resignation letter here from Barb Graves. Recommend approving that resignation from Barb as library clerk.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resignation from Barb Graves. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
I also have a letter of resignation from Mr. Kimman. We all knew about it and already dealt with the situation, but we need to formally approve his resignation.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resignation of Clint Kinnaman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay.
The light went out. Does that mean it's time to adjourn?
forgot to pay the bill.
Ah,
Future agenda items.
We'll need to ratify the negotiated agreement. We'll hear from the teachers of what they think of that, what we worked out today, and then consider pay raises for classified staff and administrators. Again, we'll have an organizational meeting in July. We'll have some policy updates. We're getting closer to having a need to plan for how we reopen school. Hopefully we're back to normal. We will have to have a special meeting this month to approve our insurance situation. We'll probably do the negotiated agreement at that time too, just so we can have that done, get to work on contracts.
Okay. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
second?
It's been moved and seconded, and we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.